Hey, Slingers, welcome back to another week of the Wordslinger podcast. I'm so glad you took the time to join me. Today, I'm talking to Ryan Zee. You've probably heard of him. He's going to help you figure out how to reach more readers, so stick around.
It's the Wordslinger podcast, where story matters. Build your brand, write your book, redefine who you are. It's all about the story here. What's yours? Now, here's the guy who invented pants optional, Kevin Tomlinson, the Wordslinger.
Wordslinger.
Well, I am Kevin Tomlinson, the Wordslinger. I am so glad that you tuned in this week. We got one of the things that authors are very concerned about, I'm concerned about as an author, is finding readers, getting readers to our work, getting our work to our readers. So this week we're talking to Ryan Zee. He's the founder of Book Sweeps. You may have heard of Ryan. He's pretty popular in the indie author space. I got a chance to sit and have some drinks and a meal with him at Nink last year, so that was good. Great talking to him. He's a great guy. He just moved to Portland when we did this interview, so I'm gonna have to catch up with him after this episode goes live, just to kind of see how he's liking it up there. I'm sure he's loving it up there. It's a great place. So this week we're gonna jump right into that interview. Stick around afterwards. I got some notes on some things I'm going to talk to you about. My afterword, as I'm starting to call it, the Wordslinger afterword. So you stick around for that, and otherwise enjoy this interview with Ryan Zee, and I'll see you on the other side. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. Now I'm chatting with, I've met this cat at Nink, and it was a great conversation. We got a chance to kind of pal around a little. We sat and had some dinner together at a fancy banquet. I'm talking to Ryan Zee. He's the founder of Book Sweeps. We're going to get into what Book Sweeps is, how that came into being, and how Ryan is helping out the author community. But first, Ryan, thanks for being on the show, man.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
Coming at us all the way from Portland, Oregon. We just had a whole lengthy conversation about where we're living. You just moved to Portland. What made you decide on Portland?
So it's sort of a weird story. So like the last 2 months of last year, I actually took some time to sort of travel around to like major cities. So I went to like Austin, I went to New Orleans, I went to Seattle, some other places, and I was sort of just trying to find a place that kind of vibed with. I've been living in New York, New Jersey area for a while, and it just sort of needed a change of pace. It's like too hectic, and so Portland just sort of resonated with me for whatever reason. So. Decided to move here.
I've been to all the places you mentioned, but not Portland yet.
Yeah, you should come on down.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check it out. I've got a growing set of friends there now.
They have the biggest. Powell's is the biggest bookstore in the world.
Really?
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's an independent. I mean, it's the largest. I'm pretty sure it's the largest bookstore in the world. Definitely the largest independent bookstore.
So every time I hear someone describe their store as an independent bookstore, I go in hoping I'm going to see a bunch of indie published books in there, but that's not usually the case.
I haven't seen that yet, but I'm hoping that maybe we can do some things to change that around here.
Yeah, I think we gotta figure out a way for these two groups to mutually benefit each other. There's an opportunity there, and you're the guy. You're the one who can make that happen.
I might be able to. I mean, you should go in there. I mean, it's crazy. It's the largest. I'm pretty sure it's the largest store in all of Portland. It's like a full city block long and wide.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So, I mean,
I've heard things. Yeah, definitely heard about it. And I am definitely that guy who hits all the big big and small bookstores in all the cities he visits, as many as I can cram into a trip. In fact, I nearly missed one of my panels. I was in San Francisco Writers Conference this past weekend, and I had a break, and I went and checked out a couple of bookstores and nearly missed one of my panels because I was head down in a big stack of books. But let's hop over. Let's talk about Book Sweeps, and why don't you give me a breakdown of what that is and what you do?
Yeah, I mean, so Book Sweeps is primarily it's a book giveaway platform that aims at helping authors grow their platforms and generate leads. So we run primarily multi-author giveaways that leverage the audiences of the authors involved, along with our fairly sizable audience that we've grown over the last few years. So I started this in 2016, and since then we have generated our email list is currently around 100,000 subscribers, and we have
Okay.
another 10,000 or so on social media. We run promotions that are primarily aimed right now at helping authors grow their email list and their BookBub following.
Yeah, man. I know it's cliche by now, but that mailing list is my key marketing tool. I think it's every author's most important marketing tool.
Hmm.
Yeah, promotions like what you're talking about have helped me tremendously. Uh, what was sort of the impetus behind that? Well, like, what made you decide that platform needed to exist?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I started working with authors sort of like 2013, 2014, and then I started my own business in 2015. And so like towards the end of that first year of being in business, I kind of I was working with multiple clients who were romance authors. They're fairly well known. And so we were, trying to come up with some different strategies to help, basically help them grow their platform. So I basically created a multi-author giveaway as an experiment just to see, would this work? How would it work, etc. And it worked. It worked really well. Bottom line. So I sort of, I did more of them, and the word sort of got out organically, just word of mouth. I was fortunate to be working with people who had some clout in the industry to begin with. Um, and so, it's just sort of a thing that steamrolled onto itself. And then sort of, by, mid, late 2016, it sort of became obvious that I needed to really double down on the direction I was moving in with this. So we set up a basic website, and it's, since then we've worked with almost 4,000 authors.
Hmm.
So it's been a interesting kind of crazy ride the last couple of years. It was sort of an unintentional business in a way. I wasn't
Yeah,
really intending to, start a lead generation company or, a platform building company, but it was just sort of, it was working so well. Like it would have been stupid of me to have said, I'm not going to keep doing this. So
right. Aren't most like successful businesses ultimately randomly, like they just appeared randomly. No one was planning for it.
yeah,
Half the businesses I know from Silicon Valley started off as something else entirely.
yeah. I mean, I was just consulting with authors on like, email marketing and some other like random marketing topics. I wasn't really expecting this to happen at all.
Right. So why authors? Were you an author yourself?
No, I mean, it's a goal one day to like write a book.
Yeah,
But I experimented with it in college, and I found that writing fiction made me sad. I don't know if you've ever had that experience,
I have
or
had
like,
this experience. Yeah.
like it was the sort of thing where like I just couldn't, you know,
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. It wasn't like good for my mental health, to put it
Wow.
bluntly.
Wow. I haven't
Yeah,
had that experience, but yes.
yeah, yeah. It was like I ended up in like these dark places I didn't want to be in.
Yeah.
So, but I've always loved reading. Um, and I've always wanted to work with authors. It's sort of funny. I didn't really realize you could work with authors in college.
Hmm.
Like I was an English major, and I did all the fun Englishy things, but like somehow the idea of working with it seemed like authors are all dead people, you know, at least
You
the way it's
can't prove
done.
we're not.
Yeah, that's true. I can't. Are you really there, Kevin? Are you really there? It's like Sixth Sense. So there's some Sixth Sense stuff happening right now.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, but so like yeah, I mean, I didn't really realize you could work with authors until I got I found some internships after I graduated from college, and it sort of introduced me to the more traditional side of things. But I was ended up my first clients were actually hybrid authors, so it was a nice uh, way to sort of see both sides of the industry at the same time.
Right.
So sort of a fortunate way that I got into it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like how you put it, that you didn't realize you could work with authors.
Yeah,
Like, there was this untapped market out there that you
yeah, it was
never
like,
thought about.
and I think even now, like when I talk to people, it's like we have an internship where so people come to us and they're like, well, a lot of the even like younger people now who want to work in publishing and they're excited and contributing, they don't realize you could work like indie authors as an industry
Right.
is a thing. Like you get out
Why?
of
Why do
college.
you think that is?
Well, I don't
Why?
think well, I think there are both bunch of reasons. One is like it's not, most of these kids are coming out of college. They're reading, traditionally published books. They're studying traditionally published books. I
Hmm.
mean, all these institutions are geared to, whether intentionally or not, making people think about literature as a product of the traditional publishers.
Right.
You know, they don't speak down on indie publishing or self-publishing, but they don't really know about it. They don't say anything, and so it doesn't really come into your mind that it exists. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's interesting because a lot of these people they work, they intern with us, and they're like, oh wow, there's a whole new world out there of all these opportunities they weren't aware of before.
Yeah. That's that's fascinating to me. Just because these are kids who are going in thinking, I want a job in publishing. They know that much,
Yeah,
but their whole perspective changes when they learn about the indie author industry.
right. And there's so many opportunities really to work with authors that
Hmm.
you just wouldn't be aware of, unless you got lucky enough, you knew an author, you met an author or something who
Yeah.
happened to be successfully self-publishing.
What are some of those opportunities? I know you provide one,
Yeah.
or maybe more than one. You're an entrepreneurial guy. You may have a half a dozen things.
Yeah. I mean, do you mean like in terms of people looking to participate in the publishing industry?
Yeah, like what are some of the what would you, by your estimate, what do you think are some of the gigs that people could
Exists.
go into that exist that might not just lead to a career in indie publishing, but might be beneficial to a publishing career in general?
Yeah. I mean, like, working with authors on advertising,
Hmm.
if you're able to, there are a lot of great online courses out there. That's how I learned most of what I know.
Right.
Taking online courses, just sort of, reading blogs, listening to podcasts like yours.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you can, teach yourself some kinds of advertising, Facebook ads, I mean, it's hard to learn Amazon or BookBub ads unless you actually know an author to begin with. But
Right.
um, if you can teach yourself email marketing, it's like most authors don't know what they're doing when it comes to email marketing. Sorry if that breaks anyone's bubble here, but
I think
um,
most of them acknowledge that they don't know
yeah.
what they're doing.
So I mean, there are a lot. There's a lot of room for, and there are more. I think there are more authors looking for help than there are people able to help them.
Yeah.
Whenever I get emails fairly regularly from people asking help for email marketing. It's not something I can do
Yeah.
at this point. So
What's
I mean,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
no, I just think like if you go up and down the list of like tasks that authors need help with, even just like scheduling promotions, all that kind of fun, like virtual assistant type stuff.
Right. Right.
There's a lot there.
I have to tell you, I wish I had had the author experience that I have now
Hmm.
when I first got into marketing, because I think I would have been much better at marketing to begin with.
How
I
do you
think
mean?
most of my education in marketing has come since I became a publisher.
Why do you think that is?
Uh, I really don't know. I think it's because as a publisher, and particularly an indie publisher, you're free to try things that a lot of the established marketing agencies and that sort of thing aren't going to try.
Hmm.
But you could make a case for it now. Like I could walk into one of my old jobs and say, look, we're doing this part all wrong. We could revamp this for no overhead, and we could bring our clients a lot more money, and we could bring ourselves a lot more money. There are a lot of things like that. Email marketing alone is something that none of the agencies I ever worked with did email marketing.
Really, that's
Mhm.
fascinating.
Yeah. So,
It's really weird.
but I digress. So, um, and I had a whole other question in mind. I was going to follow up with you, but that's blown out of my head now. So we'll move on. Um, so your list, you've got, you say like around 100,000 readers subscribe to your
Hmm.
list. Is that pretty well segmented per like?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so because we run giveaways in all different genres, so we would run, the reason, well, one of the main reasons it's been successful is because the promotions themselves are very niche down. So like we wouldn't
Mhm.
run a promotion that caters to multiple genres at the same time, and typically we wouldn't even do one that caters to multiple subgenres of the same genre. So
Mm-hmm.
like we normally do like, small town contemporary romance, like sweet and mild. Like we wouldn't mix mild and sexy,
Mm-hmm.
uh, because again, the readers just they're not the same people.
Right.
Um,
Mild and sexy. That's my wife's called me that almost from the beginning.
yep. S- Sexy Kevin Tomlinson.
Mild and sexy.
Yep.
That's going on
Um,
the business card.
yeah, should right. So what was the question? I forgot the question now.
I was just I was asking you about how
Oh yeah,
seg.
so they're segmented, right? Yeah. So because they come in through those very niche down um, promotions, whenever they sign up, we know exactly what they're interested in based on what they signed up for.
Right.
So it's easy to segment them that way. And then also when they register on the site, we ask them for their preferred genres. So um, yeah, we have a lot of information about what they're like, or what they're interested in reading.
So you had mentioned that this is for not only for helping build up your mailing list, but also your BookBub following. Have you seen a lot of value in nurturing that side of the audience?
Yeah, we have a lot of the authors we work with are really into, they're really excited about those promotions. We've
Hmm.
run probably one or two a week at this point, in all genres, and typically we see results over, like let's say within a week to 10 days or so, you would
Hmm.
get, maybe 250 plus, uh, uh, depending on how active some of the authors are and co-promoting it.
Hmm.
We could see anywhere from like 250 to even though we've seen 1,000 up to like 1,000 followers in that very short period, when the authors were feeling very motivated to help promote it themselves.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, the results can get pretty, well up there. Um, yeah, and the authors are usually, they're excited about running their, they like participating in them. We've gotten really good feedback on them lately.
Hmm. So that's just driving people to be followers on BookBub, right? That's not
Yeah,
necessarily.
so yeah, so the goal there is to get them to follow you on BookBub, and that way they would hear, if you have a new release,
Right.
or if you have an on sale, but just a promotion with them, they would get a notification, and they also have that the pre-order alert thing
Yeah.
when you have a certain number of followers. So a lot of authors actually they participate to unlock some of those benefits that BookBub offers
Right.
once you reach a certain number of followers.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah. I do not utilize that well enough. Only because I had a beef with BookBub. I'm not against them or anything.
Hmm.
It's a pride thing. It's like I don't want to beg you to take my money. That was always my thing.
Right.
But I've used BookBub at promotions and done some BookBub advertising, and so I get it. I mean, it's very
Yeah. Well, we used to run Amazon follower promotions also, and the authors, for the most part, they liked them, but I found it personally hard to justify running them when we couldn't point to any, we couldn't, they don't, because Amazon is, they don't give you any information about how many followers you gain.
right, and they're not dependable on alerting those followers.
No, yeah, I mean, like sometimes it happens like weeks later, so.
Yeah.
Um,
What about Draft Digital's new release notification? Maybe we should work up a little handshake deal. You can push people, help promote that.
that's not a bad idea.
We give information, we give numbers. So,
Yeah, we're also starting to do Instagram follower promotion. So
yeah, I
we'll
could
see.
see that being big. I was
Yeah,
just literally having a conversation about Instagram today. That's another one I don't utilize
mhm.
as much as I should.
Yeah, I'm not sure how useful Instagram is yet, but
Yeah,
we had a lot of authors interested in exploring it, so we're running them, and we'll see how that goes.
yeah. I like it though. I like
Yeah.
it seems to me the core idea behind your business is to generate, a loyal following. Is that
Hmm.
kind of the idea?
Yeah, I mean the primary that's the primary goal is to help authors sort of speed up the process of generating organic uh,
Yeah.
readers. Readers who actually um, want to uh, read books and not just win prizes.
Hmm.
We have a lot of we've put a lot of effort into sort of making sure that the freebie seekers, um, don't join people's email lists
Yeah.
through various means. So the list that we have at this point is pretty curated in terms of people actually interested in reading. So that's always, it's always the goal, getting people real readers in an ethically, in an ethical manner.
Yeah. That's been one of my biggest hangups with a lot of the promotion tools that are out there, is that I end up with a crop of, we'll just use the gentle term, deadbeats who don't want to buy anything. And then I end up with a bunch of emails. Every time I send an email out, I get things like I got yesterday from two people. One person just responded with like this stuttering jargon of don't buy books. Please send free copy this email, and stuff like that. One guy says, "This is wonderful. Send my free copy, print only, to this address."
They want you to mail. They want you to mail them a
He wants
copy.
me to physically mail him a copy of the book that I just told everyone was on pre-order.
Just because.
Yeah, just because. Yeah, because that's the way he rolls. I better respect it.
He's the king of his land.
He gets to be king of his land. I also get to be king of my land. I'm king of the unsubscribe button.
Go away.
So that's good to hear that you help vet that. Where's, unless it's like a proprietary secret, like what are some of the ways that you help clear those folks out?
Yeah, I mean, so one thing is, so like our promotions are GDPR compliant. I'm sure you're aware what I don't know if we
Right.
want to get into what GDPR is, but basically,
We know that it's yeah, I don't want to get into the weeds on it, but it's to help keep spam down. I'm trying to simplify it without oversimplifying it, but
it's
the
a
double
European
option
privacy law.
Yeah,
Yeah.
privacy law.
So unlike some other services that have popped up, we've always required that the readers actively, they select the authors that they're interested in hearing from. So like, it's not a situation where you would sign up and then you would get emails from 50 or 100 people just because you clicked, I want to win a prize kind of situation. That's what a lot of people do, and I don't think it works. I've had really bad experiences with that personally, and I have heard a lot of very, very bad stories from other authors who've done that too.
Yeah.
So we've never done that. And then on top of that, we have like multiple confirmation steps. So it sort of like goes back to the idea of a double opt-in, where people are making very clear that they want to actually be on your list. So we have a sort of a modified double/triple opt-in process that requires readers to actually, in addition to actually checking off the authors they want to hear from, they actually have to confirm again that they're aware that they're going to receive emails, and then we do something else on the other after that helps filter out more of the bad actors.
That's interesting. So that's been pretty effective, huh?
Yeah. I mean, so it's just a matter of like putting obstacles in the way.
Yeah.
Of people.
So even though they're not paying for the book, they're paying a price of sorts to get to.
They're paying with their time,
They're paying with time.
And their concentration.
Yeah. So you have any numbers on like the dropout rate when people start the process and then decide, nah, it's not worth it. I just wanted a free book.
I don't, unfortunately. So like that's like the one hole in our system, is that we would need access to like all of the authors' email marketing systems basically to really have great data on that. So otherwise we're relying on the authors themselves.
Okay. So you don't collect those addresses and then parse them out. They go directly to the author.
Do you mean
you have a list you email to, but you don't necessarily track who's signing up for what author's book?
Oh no, we do track that, but I mean, like, we don't. What I understood your question was, what happens after the authors get the emails?
We can answer that too. Yeah, that's fine too.
But I'm not sure what the answer to that is. So like, I know, like that was the question I was answering. My point is, like, we know who, we know which readers are signing up for which authors, but we don't know what those readers are doing once they get on those authors lists.
Right. Okay.
We don't have that kind of X-ray vision yet.
All of us authors get on board with the idea of sharing all our information with
Right.
people.
Exactly.
You're always so open to that.
I'll be checking my clock for that.
Yeah. Keep an eye on that. That's
Yeah.
gonna happen any minute. So that's cool, man. So you started this in 2016,
Hmm.
which, by the way, coincidentally, was the year I started working with Draft Digital. So
Very cool.
we've, although I was technically in the business years before that, I didn't consider myself a vendor until 2016. So it's been going pretty good. I'm taking it. You've had enough growth that you got people actually working for you.
Yeah, our team is up to about 4 or 5 people, depending on the day.
Okay. All right. Are they all remote, or did you make them all move to Portland?
No, actually, one of them, funnily enough, lives fairly close to here, but most of them are around the world. We have one person in Central Europe. Most of the rest of them are on the East Coast.
So how
Um,
do you this is something I'm always curious about. And I've got my own processes. I work remotely, I always have. I used to have remote teams for my business. But what are some of the ways you manage your team on that global scale? This is sort of outside the purview of the
mhm,
I think some authors would be interested in this because a lot of authors are now doing things like hiring various people to do various tasks for their business. So,
right. Yeah, that's a good, I mean, it's interesting. So we use Slack for to
okay,
facilitate all kinds of communication. Do you guys use Slack at Drafted
we
Digital?
do. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really
And
love it. I
I
love
love,
Slack.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I know that Skype was trying to become the new Slack.
It's just funky. I don't like it.
It is funky. I used Skype religiously for the show and never actually liked it.
Hmm.
It's always been.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress.
Yeah.
So
So
you
we
use
use
Slack.
Slack for communications, and then like I think well, I mean, obviously every business was different, but in my case, I have very clear sort of processes that we use for everything.
Hmm.
So they're checklists. I have checklists for everything basically.
Right.
Every kind of promotion, every process is broken down into multiple steps and then multiple sub steps. Um, and there's usually some kind of documentation even within those, just in case someone is unclear on what they're supposed to do.
Hmm.
So it's just like a matter of sort of figuring out. That's been sort of my big part of my success to this point has been figuring out processes that really work, and then continuing to iterate and improve on those until you sort of get the most efficient version of it.
Hmm.
Um, so I use Active. Well, I mean, it doesn't really matter what program you're using, but I use something called Active Collab for project management. So we have all of our projects in there. I mean, if you're an author, you could use that. I mean, it's a little bit expensive, but you could use that or something like Asana, which is free,
I use
um,
Trello.
or Trello.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to like
That's
track.
just for my business. Draft Digital doesn't necessarily use it. They have got 1,000 different things that they use.
Hmm.
I found Trello to be great for working with my personal team.
Hmm. Yeah, so just like tracking your projects, tracking the progress
Hmm.
um, helps a lot. And then just like having, firm guidelines in place in terms of, what your expectations are.
Yeah.
Um, there's like really, the thing about working remotely is that because there's no body language, there's no tone
Right.
necessarily. So you need to be really crisp and clear with your, text written communications.
Yeah.
Um, so that there's no room for misinterpretation or people spending hours doing something that they thought you meant when you didn't.
Right.
Um, and so I think that would be my number one recommendation is just making sure that people are always aware of what you want from them and being sort of a zealot in terms of following up and making sure that you're on the same page,
Right.
like sort of religiously. Just like, you understand what I'm talking about, great. Even if it seems annoying, it's much more annoying, I promise you, when somebody spends half a day working on something you didn't want them to,
Right.
because I've been there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that just drives you insane. So
If you've ever read 4 Hour Work Week,
mhm.
there's some horror stories in there about wasting a whole lot of time and money on with weak instructions.
Yeah, yeah. It's like
So
it's amazing. Like the power of instructions is truly incredible
yeah.
when you experience it.
Do you have to deal with language barriers or anything like that at all?
A little, yeah. So our web developers are generally, well, we have a whole team of web developers that we use, but some of them are based in India.
Hmm.
And so it's always fun working with them because you have to be up at like 2 in the morning
Right,
because they're like, you know, their schedule's like 12 hours or 10 hours ahead.
right.
And they don't start work in India, I found, until later in the day than they do in the States for whatever reason. Um, but yeah, so like with them, there's always, trouble, with communication off. There's often trouble with communication, and so just, finding people who, uh, you know, you can communicate with effectively at a distance or
Yeah.
in other countries is definitely a challenge. And then I have a woman I work with in Central Europe, but she actually lived in Pennsylvania for a while, so her English
Oh,
is
okay.
her English isn't that bad. But yeah,
Yeah.
um, it's all. Most authors, if you're an author interested in working with a developer overseas, it is cheaper, but you will spend a lot of time pounding your head into the table
Yeah.
over miscommunication.
Most authors aren't going to have to deal with developers, which is probably a big
Yeah,
plus.
it's a big plus. Yeah.
But I mean, I had a whole separate business for a while. I had developers for a while and I had a liaison. I actually hired, she was a VA that I eventually made a full-time employee that, uh,
Hmm.
you know, she could speak their language and speak my language, both figuratively and literally. And
Hmm.
I would relay everything through her, and she was more than happy to be the one to get up at 2 in the morning because it wasn't 2 in the morning for her.
Right.
And then we would download at a more reasonable American time.
It was like 7 a.m.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, which was yeah, because I'm a pretty early riser, but even I
Okay.
do not want to get up at 2 in the morning every day.
No.
So all right, man. So we're coming up against time, and I told you I'd keep this at around 30 minutes. So we're gonna go ahead and wrap up. But it was great. I'm glad we had a chance to talk and do this. I know we had a couple of reschedules and everything, but I'm glad we finally got a chance to circle up.
Yeah, same here.
So you want to tell everybody where they can find more about you and book sweeps?
Yeah, so if you're interested in learning more, I would go to booksweeps.com / authors, and there you can learn all about our promotions and register for the site if you're interested.
Very cool. All right. Well, thank you, Ryan, for chatting with me. Everybody else, right now, you're probably hearing the groovy bridge music. You may dance in place at will. Stick around for whatever I'm going to yak about on the other side of probably an ad, because that's how we do things here now. And I'll see you all on the other side.
Hear your book the way it was meant to be heard. With a fully custom soundtrack based on your material. An album of music that perfectly fits your characters, your settings. Hear your book today. SonataInscribe.com.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Ryan Zee. Be sure to check out Book Sweeps and all that Ryan has to offer. Sorry about that. I'm off track. I'm doing something new. I'm tinkering with a different way to record the show. You may have noticed a little key light reflecting off of my glasses. That's a little new. I got all kinds of stuff going on, so I'm a little distracted. But you shouldn't be distracted, especially when it comes to finding new readers. There are a couple of things I wanted to talk about this week. One, there's something I'm kind of tinkering with. There's a lot of things I'm tinkering with, but one of those is I'm kind of working through my processes, figuring out, what's the best way, what's the most efficient way to do things. I'm doing this for a couple reasons. One, it helps me to refine my processes and systems as I go, so that I'm more efficient, get more done, create a better product, that sort of thing. I'm also doing this as a step towards automating everything. And some of that automation will include handing things off to a VA, virtual assistant, or a personal assistant. I've got a beat on a couple of things. I tried this once before, and it didn't quite work out for me. It didn't work out because I wasn't prepared. And that's kind of one of the life lessons I want to put out there. I handed things off that I thought were clear and automated, but the problem was they weren't. They weren't as clear and automated, or they weren't as clear and concise as I thought they would be, or as I assumed they were. Now, I'm getting better at this, but I made some assumptions about the person that I hired. First of all, she was not a native English speaker, but she was fluent. She just wasn't a native English speaker. When I handed things off, I kind of expected that she would, think things through. Do what I would do. Ask herself, how do I accomplish the task that's in front of me? And then go and do that. But that didn't quite happen that way. What happened instead was I handed her some things that I thought I had boiled down to their most basic instructions. And I expected her to sort of take the ball and run with it. But she kind of floundered for a while. She spent a lot of time doing the wrong thing, and then ultimately it ended up costing me several $100s every time I'd give her a task that it didn't have to cost me. So all that to say, I stopped using her. I've had a couple of different VAs, but I stopped because I always had this impression that, well, it's just, if I'm going to have to go back and redo things anyway, why am I paying someone to do this stuff? It's just easier for me to just take care of it myself. So I kept all those tasks on my own plate. I've done that for quite a while now. Now, here's where things have shifted. There are enough things on my plate now that it would be worth my time to hand these things off, to delegate these things to someone else, a new team member. And so I'm preparing to do that. I'm taking the lessons I learned from my past experience, and I'm refining. So I've created processes. I use Trello for a lot of things. Trello is going to be key to what I do here, because I'll bring this person in, and I will say, look, here are the systems. Here's what it takes to do a book launch for me. Here's how to set up the pre-orders. Here's where you got to upload stuff. Here's where you got to, here's the graphics we need. Here's the copy we need. And I may be providing a lot of that stuff myself, but having someone who says, here are the tasks. Here's the checklist that you created, that you said I should follow. And I'm following up to make sure you've created this asset, or we have ordered this asset from somewhere, or whatever. So that's where that's going to come in handy. Now, how this may relate to you. You may not be at a place where you need or can afford or even want an assistant of any kind. That's fine. And it's not something you have to have. The irony of all this is the more I refine my systems, the less I actually need someone else to do all the work. So I'm steadily improving things, but my goal is to make it so easy that I can just hand it off. And where you can benefit from this is to do sort of the same thing. Start putting together processes. Start looking at what you do. What are the tasks that you repeat each time you do something? So if you're going to do a book launch, you're going to need, well, first of all, in the production of a book, there are steps. There's not just writing the book, but there's also editing. There's also the cover. There's also the back cover copy, or the book description, which will go on a website. You might want to have separate back cover and website descriptions. You might. There's, what are you going to do for social media? Which means that you need to have social media posts to post. You need copy for that. And when I say copy, I sometimes I forget that not everyone is hip to the lingo. But I was a copywriter, meaning not the copyright that you think of with the circle C that protects your intellectual property, but copywriting as a writing task. A copywriter is somebody who writes text, or as we call it in the business, copy, that is used for marketing purposes, promotional purposes, sometimes technical writing, that sort of thing. So the text that appears on the back cover of a book, or the inside flap of a book, or on a website about the book, like an Amazon page or something like that, that's referred to as copy, and that has to be written by someone. And it's a different skill set than writing fiction or writing even a nonfiction book, it can be a completely different skill set, because there's writing a nonfiction book. Let's just take that as an example. You're writing nonfiction to inform someone or to inspire them, or, and if I'm going to continue through my 4 pillars, to entertain and educate, but you're writing text in long format for a specific purpose, usually in nonfiction to convey a concept, to teach basically, or to inform. In fiction, it's primarily to entertain. Both can be to inspire. The purpose of copywriting is to persuade, primarily. Sometimes it's always going to be a blend of things, but sometimes it's more about informing the public. Sometimes it's more about describing. But it's usually all about persuasion. And that's really what marketing comes down to. You're persuading someone. So anyway, so there's that task. But let's get back on track. So there are all these tasks that have to be done. And depending on how you handle a launch, there may be additional steps that maybe even I don't do. But for me, typically, the process of a book launch is, okay, I finished the book. I have been using my looping method to edit as I go, meaning not editing while I write, but editing before I write. So I write let's say, right now my minimum per day is 2,000 words. It goes up and down, but right now it's 2,000. So I've written my 2,000 words. The next day, I edit those 2,000 words, and then I write 2,000 more. So that's looping for me. And then by the time I'm done with the book has had an edit. I use a series of tools for editing, which I can elaborate on another time. And I kind of do a quick pass and make sure things are clean. Then the next step for me is to compile that book from Scrivener. Whatever tool you use is fine, but I use Scrivener. I compile that book as a Word document, and I have it open that in Vellum, which I use for my layout. I clean up the layout, so I make sure that all the chapters appear as they're supposed to. Everything's named the way it's. I have my note at the end, which is really an afterword, and I have to make sure it's marked as an afterword and titled a note at the end, the way I like. I make sure that it's formatted kind of like a letter, so there's some block alignment, for example, at the very end of it, where my name, and I put the date that I wrote it, and I put where I was when I wrote it, and I put that stuff in there. I make sure that's all like left justified. So these are steps, and I can write these steps out and elaborate on them. And I'll tell you about another thing I'm going to be doing. I haven't started yet, but I will be. But then I spit that book out of Vellum as all the different formats, and I upload those formats to BookFunnel, create a link so that my street team can download the book. Somewhere in there, I have made my cover. See, there's a step I left out, but I have created my cover. I create my own covers, but you may hire someone to do that, and whatever their time frame is, you're going to need to work into your process. So if you're hiring someone and it takes them 30 days to make your cover, then, and you want to launch on such and such day, or you want to have the cover available for reveal on such and such day, then you need to make sure that your process includes hitting that 30 days out, requesting it 30 days out. Okay, so once it's up and ready for the street team, I send them the email. So there's another step. I set it up on pre-order, and that means I have to know the pre-order date, and usually Amazon, for example, will say, well, in order for it to go out on the 24th, you have to have the final version ready on the 20th. So I will tell my street team I have to have your edits by the 15th, so that I have 5 days to implement those edits. That by the way, changes depending on how much time I have between now and the pre-order date. So sometimes I give them I want to make sure they have lots of time. But sometimes I give myself 5 days. Sometimes I only give myself 3 days, 2 days, just to make sure I have at least a day or two in there where I can make all the edits. I give them instructions, in that email about how I want the edits presented to me, and boom, it goes out. The process from there is I've got this kind of ironed out already, but then I do my announcement to my list, the cover reveal. I announce the pre-order and I put links in the email. I have to decide how I want to present that. A lot of times I like to do a pre-order and cover reveal in a sort of marketing-esque email, still personable, and then follow that up. I have follow-up emails for the rest of the time that thing is on pre-order. So I have, maybe 3 days out, I do another email, and it's something else entirely, but I mention the pre-order. 3 days after that, another email. This one might be a written world email, which is usually an essay about history, and it's long format, and people love them, but I also put in a little blurb. Hey, don't forget, I got a pre-order coming up. I also schedule my social media during these times. So I write that stuff out. Try to do all this in advance. And this is part of why I need the processes. So I remember to do these things. But try to write this stuff out in advance. And then I can schedule those announcements to go out in social media. And I have to figure out ways to make that attractive. Somewhere in there, I've created a motion graphic. So that motion graphic gets used for social media, gets used for updating the banner on my homepage. It gets used for updating the feature block on my book page. So that's a useful graphic that gets used over and over again. If you don't know what I mean by motion graphic, go to kevintumlinson.com. Watch the homepage load, and you will see a motion graphic as the top, huge chunk of the page with text over it and everything. And go to kevintumlinson.com/books, and you'll see the feature block that I'm talking about. So that's part of my steps. That's part of the process. And all throughout, from the time that I finished the book, actually well before I finish the book, from the time I start the book to the time it goes live on pre-order day, there are all these steps, and they're all important. They're all vital. They must be done. And I've refined this as I go. This is a key component, by the way. Editing. Edit your processes, because you'll find new ways to do things. You'll find new tools that make things easier. You'll find new resources. You'll meet new people. There's all kinds of ways that you can improve this as you go. So editing is very important. Then the book goes live, and it's not quite over after that. Now it's about reminding people it's there. And now it's about reminding them about the rest of this series. A whole series of things that people can relate to, all part of the process. So it's all very long and elaborate. And when I tried listing it out as just a bullet list, checklist kind of thing, it got crazy. But I needed it. I needed that. So now I have that, by the way. I made a template in Trello. And for every book, I create a card, which is has the title of the book, the description of the book gets put in there, so I can copy and paste that anytime I want. Important links are associated with it, like the giveaway links for the street team. The cover in various sizes will be dropped into that Trello card, including 3D versions of the cover, the animated GIFs and or GIFs. Links to video versions of the motion graphics that I created that are on YouTube, on a private list or unlisted list on YouTube. The errata, and that is, I don't know why I'm laughing as I say this, but that's the errors. So when errata, maybe some people say, it's the typos and stuff that my street team send me. In the Trello card, you can create a checklist, name it anything you want. I name it errata, and then I drop in, I copy and paste from email to that checklist. And because of the way I tell them to format their lists, if they do a carriage return between each line, Trello automatically detects it and makes each error its own checklist feature, right? A little checkbox and then a line. It breaks it up for me automatically. It's kind of cool to watch it to just populate that list. And then part of the process, of course, is going through that errata and fixing those typos and checking them off that list. And so what I've got now, by the time it's all done, I've got this Trello card that contains everything about the book, and I can even put up various versions of the book. I don't do that because I'm updating the books pretty frequently, but I could put a link to the Dropbox folder where that book is stored. So all that gets done, and so all that is there for me to reference. I'm making that so that someone else could do all that, and I could reference it, so that later I can, I don't spend as much of my time on it. So this is why processes are important. Think ahead. Maybe you have no intention of ever having someone work for you, but if you start thinking ahead, like how can I make this faster, easier, better, then eventually you've got these processes and these tools that will allow you to save a lot of time so that you can spend more time writing, which is the point, right? So, okay. So Trello, favorite tool, one of my favorite tools. I love it. It's if you haven't heard of it, it is a project management tool. A little bit of a learning curve, but it was pretty easy to pick up. It works in terms of you can create teams, and the teams you can add people to those teams, share things. Each team can have multiple boards. They just recently put a limit on the number of free boards you can do. It's like 10 for the free service. More than enough for practically everyone. You can share those, of course. You can link this to your calendar. You can set time frames like deadlines on, I'm getting ahead of myself, but in the boards you create cards, and the cards can be whatever you need them to be, including checklists or whatever. You can set deadlines on that. I use the deadline thing I put the go live date for the book as the quote deadline. That way, as I'm getting closer, that thing changes colors. It goes like yellow, red, and then on the day that you check the box, it goes green. So that way, I've got a record of what day that book went live, when it was published, essentially. And that's handy for me, but it'll be even more handy later when I hand this off to somebody. But I can quickly reference. If someone asks, when did such and such book? Sometimes people ask. Sometimes I'm doing an interview or something, or maybe there's a contest, and someone says, we're only accepting books from this span of time. It happens. So now I've got that. And I use, by the way, Trello to produce this show. I'm looking right now. If you see me glance down, I've got my iPad in front of me. My big screen's up behind me. But this is actually quite handy. I've got Ryan Zee's information on the Trello card that I built for him. This is the episode. It's got the show notes. It's got the date that I did the interview. It's got, if I want to include photos or if I want to include links, all the links are in here. Everything is on this card, and I can quickly reference it, glance down and see it and deliver it to you as content. So Trello is a very handy tool. I'm going to do a series of videos, I think, on Trello for authors at some point. I'm sure I'll regret saying that right now, but I already had this in mind. I think it would be a great tool. So all that, the idea here is, and that was the other thing, speaking of a series of videos, I'm going to record screen capture video of me performing the tasks, going through it like a training exercise, create an entire training kit that I'll upload to YouTube, and I'll put as unlisted so that no one can just find it. You have to have the URL to get to it. I'll create a playlist of the whole thing. And then when I hire someone in to do this stuff through a service, or maybe I hire someone directly, I can hand them a link to that playlist, along with whatever other resources. And the idea here is I want to be able to, just like everything else I do, I'm aiming at, this is the Masters of Education coming out of me now, the teaching certificate and all that. I want to hit all the modalities when I'm teaching someone how to do this stuff. So that's auditory, visual, and tactile kinesthetic. So what you hear, what you see, and what you do and experience. So I want to hit all those so that whoever gets this stuff has an easier time learning how to do it, so that I don't have to spend as much time training them. Okay? So I want to be a shepherd. I don't want to be a taskmaster. I want to gently nudge the herd, nudge the sheep in the direction of where I need them to be, where they will graze, where they will lie down. But I don't want to carry each individual sheep there. So, all that said, I'll have the videos. So that's both audio and video, audible and visual, auditory and visual. I'll have everything written down, which is sort of visual, plus if it's a checklist, it's tactile kinesthetic. I'll have these processes all built out so that people can learn quickly. And that way also, if someone doesn't work out, the way the last couple didn't work out, if I hire someone and they're just not working out, or they reach some level of success and it means leaving me behind, God bless them, I hope that does happen. I hope it happens a lot. I hope that just by working with me, people achieve the success in their career that they want. That's what I don't care if I have to replace you. I mean, I like a guy an attorney I worked with for a while. His name was Jim Moriarty, and I'm not even making that up. He's kind of a curmudgeon, but I love the guy. And I remember telling him when he brought me on board, I said, I'm not going to be here permanently. I got plans and designs that are going to take me away from this place. So, are you sure you want to hire me? And his words were, I rent people, I don't own them. And I thought that was great. So, all that, I'm going to create this system so that I can hand it off not just to the immediate person I hire to do this, but to the next person as well. I want to make it obsolescence proof as much as possible, which may mean periodically going and redoing video, by the way, as processes change. And that's another reason why I'm trying to refine all this before I hand it over. But there is a certain point where you just gotta launch, right? It's not about good enough. It's about minimum viable product, MVP. The MVP for this whole process is, can I hand this off to someone and with a reasonable expectation that they could do it without my constant supervision. Now, again, where that might benefit you is, think of yourself as your own VA. If you don't have any designs to hire someone, or you don't have the money, or it intimidates you or whatever, don't worry about that. Think of yourself as your VA. How do you make it easy? Because I advocate wearing different hats in this whole process. So when you're writing, you're a writer. You're not editing. You're not, a marketer. You're not doing anything. During the writing session, you're a writer, and that's it. When it's time to edit, you put on your editor hat, and you're an editor. You're not the writer. You can't let your feelings get hurt by killing your little darlings, taking things out, adding things, or whatever. You're the editor, and that's your job, and you do your job. And when you're done with that, and the book is finished, now you become the marketer, and you just wear the marketing hat. You're not the author, you're not the editor, you're all about promotion. Well, you can have a VA hat in that as well. You can put on your VA hat to get these tasks done so that the marketer can do a better job marketing the book. So, thinking that way, you want to make sure that you have refined the processes so that you're not wasting your time. You're paying your VA at that point with your time. You, the author, who should be writing more books, who should be improving, her craft, who should be learning more about the business as a marketer. You're the entrepreneur. You're the CEO. The CEO doesn't have time to do the marketer's job. The CEO doesn't have time to do the VA's job. So you want to make it easier, right? So anyway, so there's all that. One thing I wanted to throw in here at the end, this has nothing to do with the VA thing or processes or systems per se. It's more about why we do this stuff. And I have people approach me a lot. My readers approach me a lot. I get a look into their personal lives pretty often. One of my readers, whom I love dearly, has told me for years about, her family, her daughter and her daughter's horses. She recently started taking treatments for something that has her kind of, looped out a lot. And so she always apologizes that she hasn't gotten to a certain book yet or whatever. And I'm like, God bless you. Just you don't have to do anything. I'm not requiring anybody to do anything. You can do what you got to do, but take care of yourself first, and just enjoy the books. That's the point. They're not work for you it's not a homework assignment. But one of my readers this past week wrote to tell me that she is going through chemotherapy, and that she has to sit for hours, doing this, and it's just boring, not very engaging, painful at times. But she wanted to thank me because she's been reading through my books, and not just my books, but she's on my mailing list. So those written world emails that I send, periodically, probably not as regularly as I should, but the emails that I send that are little tidbits of history, essays about history, she reads those. She enjoys them, and she enjoys reading my fiction. She enjoys reading my note at the end, my little afterwards that I write that are sort of a breakdown of what, things that I was thinking, the stuff I went through to write this book, stuff I went through in my career. She likes reading all that stuff, and it helps her pass the time, but it also feels meaningful to her. So these are her words, right? She's not the only reader that I've ever had that has reached out to me this way. Lots of my readers have. Some of my readers, one guy is very proud of his son and what he does, and he's always offering to. He gives me great critiques on things. He's a great resource for things, but he sticks by me. He's loyal to me as an author. He enjoys what I'm creating, and he gives me advice. He's sent me on trails where I've done some research, found some things. He's corrected things that I got wrong. So he's become. I put him on my street team. This guy's sharp. But guys like that, readers who reach out to me with, I read this story and it made me think of you. I thought you might be interested, and that becomes research in a book later, or it just becomes inspiration sometimes. We, as authors, as writers, there's a component to what we do that we sometimes we talk about, but we don't often consider and appreciate, and that is that we're not the only one involved in this process. Sure, we talked a little about this, but there's VAs and editors and cover designers and copywriters and all kinds of people that might be part of our process. But ultimately, at the beginning of all this, there is you. And at the end of all this, there is your reader. And everyone else in between, and every step in between, every process that you go through, every task that you put on your list, it's all about helping you as the writer project what's in your mind into the mind of that reader at the end of the line. And we do it not just because we have a story to tell, not just because we want to make a living, not just because we love the craft. We do it because it has a positive impact on the lives of others, and it has a positive impact on the world. That is what it means to be an author. To me, and I hope to you, and I hope you'll start to consider it, because we touch lives. I mean, it's profound. It's something I just greatly appreciate, just love, that I touch the lives of people all over the planet. Maybe not at the same level as, Dan Brown, Stephen King. Maybe I am not reaching the same number of lives, but I get quite a few emails from people. I feel pretty good about it. I feel pretty good about the fact that a few hundred people write to tell me, about their lives, about how I've impacted them, how I've entertained them, how I've, somehow met one of my 4 pillars in writing for them. Out of several thousand, I think at this point I'm at around 40,000 subscribers on my newsletter. Out of the thousands and thousands of books sold, there's a human being behind all of it. It's not just a number. It's not just demographics. It's not just one more faceless person, one more entity. It is a human being, and we are human beings, and we get to interact with people from a distance and still touch their lives. It's profound. It's just absolutely profound. So that said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up. Hope you enjoyed this interview with Ryan Zee. I hope you enjoyed this afterward with me. Hope you got something useful out of it. I'll continue to elaborate on this stuff as we go. I use some specific tools, and as I said, I'm constantly refining this process. I'm getting much better at this, but it's not just about software, by the way. Or hardware, honestly. It's also about how I've set up my space, how I've set up my environment to help me do this. I included a couple of photos of my workstation, we'll say, my desk, in its various modes. Right now, it's in podcast production mode, which means now this, I don't know if this will continue this way or not. Right now, it means that there's a tripod with my iPhone and a light, and then I've got my light over here. That's new. But there's the microphone here. Normally and I've got it up, but I'm not using it. There's a camera back here that I use when I do the actual interviews. I was using it to record this portion of the show. That's changed a little. That's what I mean by refining and editing. As I go, I'm changing how things work. But the environment I'm in is just as important as the software I use, the tools that I use. It's another tool to help me do this work. And I've got it arranged. Got my iPad down here in front of me. This is a new idea. I'm recording audiobooks now. So this is a new experiment. And I can read from my iPad, which is on a little tilted stand directly in front of me. But it also came in real handy for putting the show notes on, for having this resource that I could leverage while recording. So anyway, all that stuff. You look around you and find out what you have. This is stuff I just had. I just had all this stuff laying around. I'm using my iPhone to record the video. I'm using a key light that I already owned, a tripod I already owned, microphones and other things that I already owned, and just looked at them in a new way to figure out how can I improve on what I'm doing, make things easier, faster, better. So, all that said, I hope you have a wonderful time. Figure out the process that works for you. Start somewhere. Don't worry about getting it perfect right off. Try something for a while, improve it, try again. and just keep doing that. Keep iterating and optimizing, as we say, until you've got something that you can bat 1,000, you can knock it out of the park. You will get there. So if I can help, reach out, go to wordslingerpodcast.com, leave a comment on this episode, or send me an email. If you're on YouTube, you can comment on YouTube. I'm trying to get a lot better about checking YouTube comments. But anyway, other than that, God bless you. I hope you have a wonderful weekend ahead. Mother's Day coming up, so kiss your mom. Tell her I love her for me. And take care of yourselves out there. And I'll see you next time.
Wordslinger.